Tene ta tanda ta six pa tangbo tenzuge jerdo yedan lamdan ndebusomte dudu ki sonre la tene ta te jesla ya yang jardo yedan lamdan ndebusom sonre la ta te karisiru namu ge tenchu ge nambanda bochege 양자르도 효지 중앙라 공도 효지라 드니 텔라 드니 데 준생 카레레세나 당보 이람데섬데 두두지 섬네 롭좀 히바세 드니 텔라 데지 제바르히네 히바르 히비 온드세데 송인사레라 드니 데이처나 다단다 예 코르데 효지레
Who's in charge of maintenance? Yeah, I can barely hear Rinpoche, so we either have to turn it off or use a different fan. Can you hear me? What? No. They can and you can? Okay. So what Rinpoche said was,
okay. No.
The first 6 verses of our text presented the ground, path, and fruition briefly. The text is now going to go over the same subject again, that is, the ground, path, and fruition, but in much more detail. I apologize for the repetitious nature of traditional Buddhist texts. But the reason for this is that the initial presentation is a brief summary or introduction, and the ensuing presentation is a detailed explanation.
Tene ta tela ya jerdo kare tanda ye nelu tela tene ta yedan lamdan drevo som yepale ta tela nyamso lembege tsulla tene tawata gambata jepa som yepenane tangbo ta tawa kor yela tene te yang tanda jangkama pa kuntin sumba ranjung doji manam kana ne sona yela dondo chepa ta dain sonre la ta tige ye netan la ta kasin shuba yenda la tene netsul to nonsul yechaja chimpo sersana ne lu tung chulu namba ni ye na ne tan chulu khande imba ta chulu te ne lu khande imba te yapo je tena phap ne ta ti ge sanla ni hi chepra jinji ji pa te la tene ta tawa yela dondo chepa ta dain se ta yela dondo che te me pa la ye par do tapayo mai pa ye pa la me par kro tapayo mai pa ye ngupu nelu la kare ye pa te tardo semjete ne tha che pa te la tawa se ta ngarang tombo tawe te na pha ne tini te gang gu yo re la tini te la tawa sung yo re.
In coming to understand the ground, as well as in terms of the ground, path, and fruition generally, one is involved with the 3 aspects of practice, which are view, meditation, and conduct. Especially view is the view of the ground. As was said by the 3rd Jawan Karmapa, confidence in the view is the eradication of superimposition and denial with regard to the ground. Now, previously we saw that the ground is explained as the manner of being, the way things really are, and the manner of confusion or bewilderment, what bewilderment is. Through these things being revealed or established, the special certainty that is generated in one's mind when one comprehends these is the view. And the view is to be without the assertion that that which does not exist within the ground exists, which is superimposition, or the belief that that which does exist does not exist, which is denial.
Tene ta tela yang jerdu ta tela rimba yindula tene siki pa juni zamji ge den yo la tene tele tangbo siki pa tangbo ye de ta ngalwe pela tene ta chitang hemba tong hemba hidro meba hemba de panggu per te par la tene te na ne tangbo de ta kang la hemba tang ma ne ka jenji ji dewa la song ne ta tanda ne ka ko on de sie na tene ka ka la tene tingen zen gam ne nyamnyong te si ji ne nyam te ji ba la tene tela te si nyam te la hin ne tene ngune ge gong ge nyamnyong chepra chin te jila che ma to pan rawo ta tende ne kap ge dewa la hen ba te hinji minji tang gu gre tela kare gu gre se na tan tambe ne lu te senji ne lu te yang ta ba ji to gu gre song ne tembran se par la tene te yang pe go ne tembran se par 다 빼고네 템브런세바 tel라 빼 테네 트라라 돈츠소 porque 빼래라 테네 다 태양 장츠 데 지당그 랑 카니마 쭉이요래라 테네 쭉바 데 테네 다 랑게 무슨 통조나 데 랑게 롱제요나 te hira yapu yungu yuwa te yinaya te rangi long ma che par donzi te la hini tene ta te so ne depa re la so ne depa la tene rangi te la tene jema rangi te la long che juma juma tene yenje ondo horwa dabo tene rangi te la long che pale ringbon dabo che sonwa te la jan yung yo la pe te yendo ta ngaran so gambe kapsula tank nelu nguni karimba te togo yo la te maimba ne kap ge chen la te ne ta te si nyam dabo ta dewan dabo chung si che pala tene 제 현바 첨부세나 되게 되지 응은이게 냠냠 체버지 지와라 바르치 세게 요라라 드니 티처나 내가 그 대와라 현바데 가르리세나 페나 도미게 돈스 사바다 찍반다 보지 용기 요래 드니 대라 착바다 현바 빵고 그래
The presentation of the ground here makes up 12 stanzas, the first 4 of which use opposing analogies to show that craving or fixation must be given up. Now, in general, the type of craving that is presented here is that which can arise through the practice of meditation, where you have an experience and you begin to crave the continuation or repetition of that experience. The reason why such craving or attachment must be relinquished is that the purpose of meditation is to realize the nature of one's mind. Attachment to any form of temporary or conditioned experience inhibits or obstructs this realization, since one is attempting to realize that which is not temporary and not conditioned. Now, these 4 stanzas make use of various analogies to point this out. The analogy used in the first of these stanzas, which is verse 7, is the analogy of bees getting honey out of rocks but then not being able to actually consume it themselves. It says, giving up genuine bliss, you take another path and put your hopes on conditioned bliss. Taking nectar in their mouth, bees come close, but not drinking. They are far from enjoyment. When bees absorb the nectar from flowers and so forth that they find in the rocks, they actually put this nectar into their mouths. So in a sense, they are very close to partaking of it or enjoying it. But they never actually do so. They lose it to others, and their initial collection of the nectar or the basis for the creation of honey is pointless. In the same way, when practicing meditation, we must realize the mind's nature. If we do not do so, and if we become attached to conditioned bliss, that is, a temporary experience of bliss or intense well-being that is produced by various techniques or conditions, then this attachment to this temporary and conditioned state prevents us from actually enjoying or partaking of the true result of meditation practice. And in that sense, our meditation becomes like bees collecting honey, but never actually eating it.
Tene ta telaya chitange nyamte ta tingenzente gomb caps la je nyam dabuje ji ne tini tela cha hin ne ti hyambati ge kingsong dabala yo gogi warela tene te yendo ya tablam mandawa tinde gom ne tene tablam tenzo gom nangi ware gom nang kapsula tablam tela tene ta perna lula zada longa soba gomba la tene lula dewa jewa dabota tene sanla sanong jungwa dabo tene ge nyamnyong jege yore la tene te nyamnyong jipa te ta tablam gomba te la tene lula dewa jewa sanla sanong jungwa la soba ge nyamnyong jege yore la nyamnyong jewa te kanga chedula re se na nyamnyong ji ne tablam de gomba te kanga chedula re se na te tabu te yang tene senji nelu tang chuni ge nelu te toparsi pe tab chedula gongi yore te tab sege yore mato te tabu ge dewe ge nyam te ta salwe ge nyam ta mato pe nyam tenzo tene tartu ge dreban rabo yimbala gongi yo mare la tene teacher na tene te tabu ge nekap ge dewe ge nyam rabo ta salwe ge nyam rabo tende chong na tene te la macha pa tene nguni ge tanji dewa te nyong tanji nelu te togo ge yopala suwa re la tene nekap ge tene tablang la tene dewa tang salwa la so pe nyam che na ya dra yana hine tong hong tong gamba la tene te si nyam mandawa chi pa la tene tela hina ya dra te tela cha hin hemba te ta domi dong so banda bo ji re la tela cha hin ma hin par nguni ge yong ta pe ne lu ge tawa to pe che la gamba te tene domi ge dong rang gi long che ba ta bo ji re la teacher na tela cha hin me che wala ne lu ge tan de yang ta ba che gang gu ge re so.
The situation of being bound by attachment to experience can arise through the pursuit of meditation in general, or in particular through the practice of the techniques of the path of method. In the path of method, through penetrating the channels and winds of one's body, one generates various experiences: physical bliss, states of enhanced cognitive and apparent clarity, and various other experiences such as non-conceptuality and so on. These experiences are supposed to arise on that path, but they are not the point of that path. The point of these experiences is that they themselves serve merely as methods leading to the recognition of the mind's nature, or of dharmata. The experiences themselves are not the point of meditation, and therefore becoming attached to them prevents them from leading to what they are supposed to lead to. So whenever experiences arise in meditation, experiences of bliss or well-being, of lucidity or clarity, and of non-conceptuality, it is important not to be attached to them. And the situation is fundamentally the same, whether the experiences arise through the path of method or through the practice of tranquility and insight. As long as you become attached to these experiences in meditation, then you are like a bee that collects honey but never gets to consume it. If you are not attached to experiences in meditation, then you are like a bee that gets to actually eat the honey.
Tene ta tige nyamla kempa pompa ke solti peche ke gone tempare la. Tene ta te jesla tene pe ni pate ta jei londor la kempa pompa tempare la. Londor la kempa pompa tempate ya jei jitang kepa ta lumbu ke peche tempare. Tene te yang jitanga onda xe na kepa te yang takpa jay tang. Tene lumbo te memba drapo chi re te. Tene kap ndana la pe yatonga onda xe na lumbo te si yakpo drapo jay tang. Tene kepa te la tene dupo drapo jay la song yo re la. Te pe tenpa re la. Tene te yang kandre chi re xe na tene perna tundro rabuji yina. Tundro te lenhin kukpare. Tundro te lenhin kukpare te hirage yapoje hige yo mare lenhin kukpare te yina ya tene korange tezomge perna dikpa mambo sage yo mare la ta perna singen rabu ta tan rabu je yina ya ta korang saya zamye so je ba sege yo are ma to yin tene perna tene bom chimbo japana yin ke senji mambo sia kaya yo mare la tene tige dikpa mige wa chunchun je sage yo are la. Tene kepa hera dang demba tenzuge tene jitanga onda sena tanjurge melu top. Tene rang san la hera pusam sopa ta den. Yapu raboji chang yo arete. Te yapu peche maje pala tene tene dekpa tsap chenpo tene soge yo. Perna bom raboji japna tela tene tongcha mambo se yo la. Tene ten raboji ke tongcha mambo se pa te singen rabota tan raboji ke te korang se la ya se yo mare la. Teacher na tene lumbo te pe yapon raboji da kepa te pe dupon raboji choge yo re samne. Kepa te zuge hirap te leka yapo la makolo wa se ne hirap te leka dupo la kol ni tene dungal chenpo je yonga sege yo re.
Te kasa de zikche dambo nyi song bare.
Zikche dambo nyi.
Ore.
Zikche dambo nyi te pe
Lare. So the first of the series of opposing analogies here is an instruction to relinquish attachment to experiences in meditation. The second analogy is about discarding attachment to what is to be taken up and to what is to be given up. The analogy used here is the analogy of a clever person or being and a foolish being. However, in this case, the foolish being is the positive analogy, and the clever being or person is the negative analogy. The first two lines say, having gone astray, these animals do not create suffering. On the basis of this human life, experts create suffering. Normally, we would think of animals as stupid, and experts, human beings with highly developed knowledge, as smart. But animals do not accumulate very much negative karma. Even predators, such as lions and tigers, kill to eat, and therefore they do not really accumulate much negative karma because of their motivation. And furthermore, during their whole lives, they don't kill as many beings as an expert will kill in one instant with a bomb. In one instant, a human expert can kill thousands of people, and thereby human intelligence is often used not for the good, but as a source of great disaster and the accumulation of negative karma. So the analogy here is that under certain circumstances, it's better to be dumb than smart.
Tene tatige tente kandijirisena tene tatela hiraptan demba tene kepa taji sinkin yorela tene tetan tati tanda kepe kepe teje tene tate main pate lumbu kepe te perna nanjurpa tene taji shira mejinke tene gamjamke tende yorela tene tige ta kepa tenju kande segre na tene tela taji se tene tahin ji ne tene toge giripala kamne tene tige somlo mamboji tang shirap tela peche mamboji se ne denaya ngune ngarala gopi nyamne te togiyo mare tige mamboji higiyo arvesena higiyo arete inayo nyamne togiyo mare la tige cherna tezi tela kepa hiradan tembati tene neka peche mepanda boji chagiyo la tene tachi namjurpati kandije resena tene tige tachi mambosi hiraptan temba yungi yo mare te yinaya senaldo pamne tingenzen gambala tene ta tanda namke dutsite somna namke dutsana tene ranghin kiwa me pata chutamchi ge nelu topa seni ge nelu topa Tetabu ge datsitin tongni tene korang pe namhen tsemne tene pe tartu kundebo togi yore la tene tetabu ge cherna tene hirap ge taji mambu sepa le tingen zengamba ti hira khal chemburi zungwa re la tene chitang ge hirap ge taji jeba ti dupo mahare yabore te yinaya te tahin jepa la hini tene nyamni nangju majung na tezi pangbondabu chogo yore.
So the first two lines of the 8th verse give the analogy. The second two lines give that or explain what the analogy refers to. On one hand, practitioners come to drink the nectar of space. On the other, experts stay very attached to objects. Experts here refers to the learned, those who are very learned in Dharma, and therefore are very skilled at the rigorous logical analysis of phenomena. Such persons can be referred to as Dharma experts. They correspond to the clever individuals in the previous analogy. And then those who correspond to the dumb or stupid animals in the previous analogy are yogins or practitioners, who, compared to the clever experts, appear somewhat dumb. Now, the experts use their intellects to rigorously analyze the nature of phenomena. The criticism of that here is not criticism of their analysis itself, it's just that they never get to the point of applying what is discovered through analysis in actual meditation practice. If the fruit of logical analysis of phenomena is not used in meditation practice to generate authentic experience of the mind's nature, then while a great deal of knowledge and information may be accumulated, it is useless. On the other hand, yogins or practitioners rest their minds in meditation and thereby drink the nectar of space. Drinking the nectar of space here means coming to realize the nature of the mind or dharmata. So yogins who are comparatively dumb achieve the ultimate result. The point here is simply that meditation is more important than clever analysis. It is not saying that the logical analysis of phenomena is bad, it's good. But if it's never applied in practical experience, it is wasted.
Tene ta teacher na ta tanda ngarazo songo doji tipa tumo ma impe chanlin la ta chitang tawa tena papa ka so kande nang yore se na chitang tawa tena papa ke tap number 2 yore la tap number 2 bo te tap tang bo te jipo lam do si ne tene hirap jeba re la tene teya ta zo tene tanda tanong shoki hiba yendala pangam papa ludu gomba tarto tene tongni gita chutam chi tongba ni gita tena pap ne ribi ge ta hin chi ne ngopon denzo tene dembar trupa yo mare 대견도 대조 되네 락파니 somno 야보 제땅네 대응니 똥바레 som베게 니히제 바레라 되네 다 디기 니히 디지니 똥니도 때나 파바레 똥니도 때나 팝네 되네 다 데라 데라야 넘버 2 요래라 공사가 다음에 봐도 취지 다음에 봐시 공사가 다음에 봐시 당 알아서 뒤전도 다인 나인 sombe게 열때 드니 루지 치노 파르섬 라 치탕 컨트롤니 다 다인 som게 요래때 이나야 텔라 다힌 지니 다싱킹 도도지 루본달란두게 세나요 요 마레라 샘지텐도 요아리베세나요 요 마레 티처나 공사가 다음에 봤습니다 대견도 취지 다음에 봤어도 칭우보 사도르라라 소바동 류라 소바 텐조 이나야 테니티 톰부 망보제 풍보 성네 풍보 망보제라 류게 힌네 현바제레마도 응네게 트바 요 마레라 티처나 데타보 마투팔라 마투바 네히 제버진지 지니 다디 샘그텐도라 응네 데 뎀바레 sombe게 니히다 이치제게라 디 니히 데라 따와세 다디 돈이 임바다 주탐지게 내루 임바들 니히제게 요아라 델 따와레라 디 따와데 간디시는 얘기 요아레신 제발라 되는 얘기 요아레 데 단다 데네 제발 함도세 봤은 거 요아레 델 니히 제버진지 제게 요아 테네 다테 마임베 타와텔라 칸디레세나 테네 다티게 송호 도지티벨로라 테네 응선람드시페 타와레라 응선람드시페 가솔라 칭우보텔라 송로히도 마당와제 테네 낭그 셈텔라 낭그 나란츠게 셈텔라 가바도 테네 테 지발람드시네 코체라 요사레 제이레 니레 삼반다보 마임바 코란 테카라 센지넬루 데라 센 코란 ngote 가바도 야보 제 따니 냠뇽지 바텔라 응섬람도 시 따와 숭게 와레라 데이터부 따와 넘버 2 와레 당아란서 데인 우리 데이터 보잖아
와서 뭐죠? 신은 내게로
아야 다 데이터 보잖아
오야 It is for this reason that in Vajrayana practice, the view is established by means of direct valid cognition and not inferential valid cognition. These two types of valid cognition are two possible ways that the view can be generated, and therefore they are two possible bases for the path. Taking inferential valid cognition as the basis of the path, or using inferential valid cognition to ascertain the view, involves the use of rigorous logical analysis, such as was expounded by Arya Nagarjuna, in order to reveal emptiness as the abiding nature of all phenomena. In this way, one examines or analyzes phenomena, including apparently solid things, and proves, through logical reasoning, that they are empty. Now, this has really two aspects to it. One is the consideration or analysis of the imputed self of persons. The other is the consideration or analysis of the imputed self or existence of phenomena. In the first case, what one is analyzing is that which we normally think of as I, or oneself. And one looks to see what the characteristics of this imputed self are, and if there is anything in reality that possesses these characteristics. One looks to see if the self is seated in or identical to the body, and to see if it is seated in or identical to the mind. One discovers that none of these are the case, and that therefore the self of persons does not exist. With regard to examining the self or existence of phenomena, one, through logical analysis, shows that all phenomena can be broken down endlessly into components. Therefore, that even the coarsest and most apparently solid phenomena are merely aggregates, and therefore have no true existence. Now, through this type of analysis, one generates a great certainty, conceptual certainty, about emptiness being the nature of things. The other way to establish the view, which is characteristic of the Vajrayana, is called taking direct valid cognition as the path. And in this approach, one does not primarily consider external phenomena or external objects. One looks directly at one's own mind. Furthermore, not only is the object of consideration different, but the manner is different as well. When looking at the mind or looking for the mind, you do not look for it with reasoning. You do not attempt to prove that the mind must be one thing or many things and so on through logical analysis. You look at it directly to directly observe its characteristics.
Tene ta tela ngaranso songo doje tipichu nyomlin nangki choge tana ta tanda shanlin la taryimba la kandi nango yore kandi nangi yore sena tene ta chitang chula dangba nang kapsula tu som gom som nangi yore la te nane tangbo tuba tang samba ni nang kapsula tene nga samam ta sepa te nang yo mare la wona kari nang yo re sena jeba lam ta sepa te nang yo re jeba lam ta sepa la tene ribige ta hi ji ne dondo ji ne hirap ga ta ndo nge hi chebar jin ji ta te ta bu ti chuni ji damba ti te ta bu ji re samba tā tāmba dāmbā tī tē tāba jī rē sāmbā kē ngē hī chē par jīn jī jī nē tī tāñ tō tā jī nāng kī yō rē lā tā tī tū sāṁ kī tēng lā pāpa kāsa lā jī pā lāṁ tā jī pā nāng kī yō rē lā tē jī sā lā gāmbī ñāṁ sā lēng pē kāpsa lā kāndī nāng kī yō rē sē na tēne jī pā lāṁ tā jī pā tē lā jī tāng kī rī pē kī tā hī jī nē ngē hī jī pā lā pē tō pā yō mē pā rā pō jī yō rē ngehi chepar chinchi togi yuwa re te ina yung gomdu te la ta ngehi ki tendo nyambar yo ngehi ki tendo nyambar yo ni teni sanhong chi che go na te si jen rinpon rabu yuwa re junsin teacher na sanji chi chan teni ta chuni je damban thongwa ta sanji je kompong topa la kalwa tongmi som la sonam chi tsu sa gu sungwa re la teni te pe ti junsin te kandi chi re se na teni te pe lam de tha rinpo rabu chi yo re la teacher na nga rang tsu ge teni tu pe drondo chi pe ka sa la jipa lam de se pa te nang yo re de gambi nyam sa lem pe ka sa la teni te ge jipa lam de se pa te nang yo ma re When a Gumbi Yamsino, the capsule candid Nangaresena, Nansam Lam the Sepati, Inchi Minchi, the Gongu Yorella, Tige, Nansam Tawa, Sidu, Tige Tawa, the Hirabge, Tachi Sepe Tawaji Maimba, Nus Yamsino, Tawaji, that thing we need Tetabuchin, those on the Tawaji. Yorella, teacher not telling us on Lam the Sipetawa, Sungi Yorella, Nite Gombi Yamsal Lembecasala, te Gongi Yore. Te Gongu Johnson, the candidates and Aranso Sunho Dojiti Patomo Maimbelola, Ceti, Luigi, Sunju Dojin Jongo Compon Topsy. Yorella, Tinite la Titang Aransu Samotana, oh, Tene Calva Tromis on the Sonum Jutsu good na, good patella, Ceti Luigi Candesi top to somebody. Seji Luigi Dojin Chungo Compontogi, not the Calva Tromis on the Sosa could be Johnson Carriore, Sabato. Youngerete, Inaya, Seji Luigi Sunju Dojin Chungo Compontop sinking Dambarella, Calva Tromis on the Sosa and Sanji Compontop sinking Dambare. Tinica Damba in Johnson the candidate, Jepa Lambda Sepa Latina, Tichon Gomna, Tenicalva Tromis on the Sonum de Sosa Gupateta, Tomo Maim be Menga Latine, Nasan Lambda Sepa Tablatena, the Seji Luigi Sunju Dojin Compon Topa in the Cherna, Naranso Songo Doji Tipilola, Gombi Yamsal Lembecasala, the Nasan Lambda Sepa the Gongi Ware.
In order to understand how these approaches are actually implemented by Vajrayana practitioners, we need to consider the fact that Dharma training or Dharma practice in the broadest sense involves three phases, which are hearing, contemplation or thinking, and meditation. When undergoing the first two stages of training, hearing and thinking or contemplation, we do not employ direct valid cognition, we employ inferential valid cognition, which is the rigorous application of logical analysis which produces a decisive or definitive certainty about the nature of phenomena. One comes to be absolutely certain that absolute truth is like this and so forth. But then, when we begin to practice meditation, we do not employ inferential valid cognition, but direct valid cognition. Inferential valid cognition is very effective in producing a decisive or definitive conceptual certainty, but it is very hard to apply the certainty which is gained through inference in direct experience. It takes a very, very long time to gradually refine it through the practice of meditation and develop the clear appearance of actual wisdom. It was for that reason that in one context the Buddha said it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons of gathering the accumulations to achieve Buddhahood. So therefore, we do not use inference in the practice of meditation, we use direct valid cognition. So therefore, the establishment of the view in Vajrayana, as in, for example, the Mahamudra, is called the direct view, or the view of direct experience, which here refers to direct valid cognition. It is gained not through inference or reasoning, but through direct observation of the mind, so that one knows in oneself how the mind is without having to infer it or deduce it. Now, Vajrayana path is said to lead to the state of great unity, the state of Vajradhara, in one lifetime and one body. This leads to the question, if the Buddha's statement that it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood is true, then the statement that one can achieve this same state in one lifetime and one body must be untrue. Or conversely, if the statement that one can achieve Buddhahood in one lifetime and one body is true, then the statement that it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood must be untrue. In fact, both are true. The reason why in one case it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood is that the context in which that long period of time is necessary is a path that is based solely on inferential valid cognition. And it takes so long and involves so much gathering of the accumulations because of the difficulty of implementing inferential valid cognition in practical experience. The reason why in the other context one can achieve the same state of Buddhahood in one lifetime and one body is in that is the context of possessing the uncommon practical instructions, which are all based on taking direct experience and direct valid cognition as the basis of the path. Therefore, in the practice of Mahamudra, we establish the view through direct valid cognition.
Tene ta te tardo ngaranso ta songo doji tipe ke kepata trupa trup tenzu ke shonlin la ta tende nang yore la tene ngaranso ya te tardo nang na be chepartam papa yore samba jere la tene tanda ndero sungwa te kandere ta six chepa ndi tanda te tene namjurpa te nam kdetsin thong tu pa cheta yenda yul tola number 6 de pa te ta hirap ching ta chi se ni 6 de pa tene nam kdetsin thong ma tu pa ta tinde song yo re la ti sungwa te pe keche bore la tene chitang hirap che ju te pe kal che bore chuni ge nelu to pa te nelu hirap che go ne ta chi se ne nge hi che par chen chi ji ne tene hirap che par chen chi tu song ge hirap che ju te pe kal che bore te yin ya te la cha na te khona la he na tene te tenda me ba cha ge yo re ti ge tene tarbatun tamchi chenpe kompong la chal tuki yo ma re la tanal nengwa chenpo chi yo re yinchi minchi ngaransu tusam ki hirap ti chi gu re te yina yo tusam ki hirap jangba kin rig ma re yinchi minchi gombe nyamsu nyong ku ki yo re la ti ki gombe nyamsu nyong gu pe damwa te te tang dangwa te tembe ki chir tang tena la nga chenpo che yeba tu song ki hirap jangpa la hen na chirang tenda mepa mesin chola tang kare tang suwa che ke nenga chenpo che yo re la ti chir na ti dangwa te tembe ki chir la teni hirap chi king re chi hu nang kda chi ten tong tu re song ni yin chi min chi teni tangpo hirap chi go re la hirap chi pe chi la gambe nyam ling te yin chi min chi go re suwa.
This is the tradition of the siddhas of Vajrayana. I therefore think it's excellent, it would be excellent if we followed it. Now here, in this 8th verse, the distinction between the proper use of hearing, contemplation, and meditation and being attached to the initial phase of hearing and contemplation is represented by, on the one hand, practitioners who get to drink the nectar of space, and on the other, experts who remain attached to objects. Now, this point being made here is very significant. The cultivation of the discernment, which arises through hearing and contemplation, is of great importance. But if we become attached to that and think of it as an end in itself, then it becomes meaningless and useless, because its only function is to prepare us for direct experience in meditation. By itself, the discernment of hearing and contemplation cannot lead to Buddhahood. We indeed need to generate the discernment of hearing and contemplation, but having done so, we must not stop there. We must actually engage in the practice of meditation. So what Saraha is saying here is, do not waste the opportunity of this life in interminable analysis, but practice meditation so that you can drink the nectar of space.
Tene ta tige ta tanda hirap la chop mini par tempata six je pa tangbo tige tene nyomnyong la chop mini pa inji minji nelu ku topate chongku pa je ta six je pa ni pa tige ne kap thu som ke hirap ndabo ta jipo ke hirap ndabo la ma chop pa inji minji nyomlin si gu ge ya pa te tempata la ta six je pa sumba te song yo are la six je pa sumba te tene ya dangwa jai ten du te la ta ji ting ke sawa la ma chop pa je gu yo are te sin di ge den la chakpa tupo ji xie na tene di ge pen ge yo ma re song ne ta te ya pe go ne tempata la tene te ya je ma zang wa ge ne la ye pe ge bu ten zo la pe ga pa re la tene ma zang wa ge ne la ye pe bu ten zo la tene je tma zo pa da bo la ga ne de la di tene te yapo ma re te yin na yang ngaran so ga ha ma go wa si ne te di ge tma la cha ne tene je zen den da bo tma yapo la hi ra ma ga wa ji tene ti zen den la so ba tma yapo te tma du bo nda bo ji re sam ne thul tene tma du bo te la pe yapo re sam ne thul ndo yo wa la pe te yendo tene ngaran so je ji tin di ge chen di ge den la cha hin hin ne tene thar tu ge nyamnyong cheparjin seni ge nelu topata chuni ge nelu topata shaja chimbe dan gamba te pa yo ne yi song da bo ji yin na tene te pe na tene mzang wa ge nang do yi bu nang yin ji cha ge yo re song ne dongwa te temba re la tene te ya jerdo ta ngaran so ji tin je kham dan la ne be kapsula jitinji chawaji she goge yoare te yinaya te khuna la hini tene ngaranso ge shaja chimbi ge ten magamban rabota tambe chu ge nyamlin zawani me jiba ta che se na tene ngaranso ge mese te chasa chola tang ge yoare la tene teacher na tene tela inchi minchi nyamlin ge ba la so.
The seventh stanza was an instruction to relinquish attachment to meditation experience and to use meditation to recognize the mind's nature. The eighth, which we've just gone through, is an instruction to relinquish attachment to the discernment arising from hearing and contemplation, and to go further and actually practice meditation. The third stanza in this section of the text, which is the 9th verse of the text, is an instruction to relinquish attachment to pleasures of this life. And like the others, it uses an analogy. The analogy is, bugs among excrement are attached to its smell and think the pure fragrance of sandalwood foul. That's in meter. Sikche takta labdo. Bugs among excrement are attached to. The meaning of this, the point of the analogy in and of itself is that bugs who live in the midst of excrement think that that smell is really good. And if they smell something that we would normally regard as pleasant, like sandalwood, they're disgusted by it. In the same way, those of us who are attached to dense ignorance, which here refers to the attachment to pleasures of this life, which are the source of existence, when we're like that, we toss away the possibility of the transcendence of suffering. And in a sense, we become like bugs. Now, living in this world, we must deal with the mundane. We have no choice. The instruction here is not that you should try to avoid dealing with the mundane. It means do not limit yourself to the mundane. Do not be concerned with or obsessed with the mundane alone and exclude the Dharma from your life, because if you do so, then you end up wasting your life.
Tene ta te jesla six jepa jubati la ya ti dangwa te tempare la dangwa kari tempare se na ta ngaran so ge tingen zen gombe kap la de chi semla ni do namba imbe chirna kap kala tene topa mandawa ta mandawa no mandawa tinde shari yung yo la tene te chi te tabu ge ta dang no tinde shari yung na tene te pe kal chembo yin so ne te la hyamba chembo chi ni te de ngone ge nyomnyo chepra chi chi jewa la zendru ma je na tene te parchi lan ro yo re so re la tene te tabu ge menwa te ya pe go ne tembe kapsala tene perna ta paju ge kombe ji ne ta sa de ko te si cha di nando chote zi chi na teni chote gi ya kha na teni te pe so yin ta te ya po yin som na di gi peng ma re di ni ma je la kom to re la teacher na de la chapa ta hemba me ba nguni ge yin ji min ji teni pe na so chen bo do la ten go re ma to bang ge kom bi ji ga bi ge choi chi de ji te la teni chapa ta hemba si na kanya peng ge yo ma re pe te yen do teni tanda ngaran so tanda ne ka ta kon de ba yen do la gam jap ne te ji no manda wanda sha milam do no manda wa sha wa ta na we lon da manda wa tu pan ta bota tene san la no manda wa sha wanda bo ta tinde gi nyam nyu kap ka la chi sigre je wa te ngaran su san la ni do no ba yin be chen na je gi re de yin na ya te la hin ni te khona tan de ni na te la gu ba yo ma re zo tang na san lam de si be ta wa yin na san ji ne lu de yang ta ba ji to ba te tem bo ji gam tu pa te la nyam nyu ya po ji chi pa ji te kal che gre ma to ne ka ge no ma nda wa sha wa te la gu ba shi ro yo ma re so ne da mo te ba.
The 10th verse is an instruction to abandon or relinquish attachment to extraordinary experiences or signs in meditation practice. When we practice meditation, we are working with our minds, and therefore we start to experience things both cognitively and in apparent appearances that we have not experienced before. We can therefore become particularly impressed by these. These include thoughts that arise that you've not had before, seeing or perceiving things that you take to be indications of some kind of attainment, various appearances, and even visions that you can experience. If you become attached to these things, they form a diversion from the pursuit of the genuine path, because you are attached to something that is conditioned and temporary. The text says, "The ignorant think an ox's hoofprint filled with water is the ocean, and look for gems therein. This water, however, will evaporate." Now, taking a transitory experience or vision to be a real attainment is like mistaking a hoofprint filled with water for the ocean. Not only is the hoofprint much smaller than the ocean, and therefore does not possess any of the things within the ocean that one might seek, such as jewels, but the hoofprint full of water is going to evaporate. and transitory experiences are going to dissolve or disappear, whereas the ocean is not. So in the same way, to invest in transitory experiences or apparent signs of attainment is a diversion. Therefore, it says, likewise, those who take their mini-experience to be enlightenment will not see the perfect qualities in developing the stable and perfect mind, because the mind clinging to mini-experiences as perfect will evaporate. We do experience all sorts of things when we practice meditation. You might see visions, you might hear extraordinary sounds, and you might experience cognitive states that are unprecedented. But none of these things are of any use whatsoever in themselves. The only purpose of practice is to recognize the nature of mind. And if you allow yourself to be diverted from that purpose or intention by being impressed with transitory experiences, then you are mistaking a hoofprint for the ocean.
Tene ta tige ngaranzo ye nelula tawi tena papa kapsala tene de Norway Khenchen pangbe sul pe ye goni tembarela tene de jesla manorwe lamte nyepe sul te ya pe ye goni ten yorela tene dring de zam jona tene ye pe yeba pe saba yete sani shoyin samai.
In that way, these four stanzas have presented warnings about four possible errors we might make in the establishment of the view, which is one's view of the ground. The next section of the text, can you hear me? The next section of the text will present four unopposing analogies, which are presentations of the correct, or descriptions of the correct establishment of the view of the ground. I'm going to stop here for this afternoon, and tomorrow morning we will go through the next set of four. And if anyone would like to ask anything like a question, that would be fine. Wait for the mic.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yep.
It was a question about that first we hear, then we contemplate, and then we meditate. And what kind of meditation is it? If you meditate on emptiness, or is it a Shine meditation?
What was this? Is it a what?
What kind of meditation is it when you have analyzed a thing and you want to let go of it?
Uh-huh.
And then what do you do when you meditate there? Does it go by itself, go to where it should go, or do you put it somewhere? Or
you mean what do you do with the certainty that has arisen through the analysis?
Yeah, if you have a thing that keeps on coming up and you think about it and you know that it doesn't belong, it doesn't have any reality.
Uh-huh.
And what kind of meditation do you do before it's liberated?
Before it's liberated, okay. The pacha de chawangama de hinsari. Tata de jundu semla shaake namyengi juchi yana. De takche tone de deme de tombanye de tenla papsane. De samje de ngopo de la zimba rondro de songwarepe yana shen tap shenda go bidoge.
Mputela chahi.
Chakshin yin sare.
Chahi ne.
Yana namye ngopo chek de chakshin namyenge juda.
Yeah.
Tapa yela shawa yana.
Yeah.
Dene ngopo de la takje tone denme de tombanye de tenla papsane dene da ngishi chepa de samje dene shenjak de ronro de rogirepes
Ti demi de tena papa ti jeba lam de sepa lam de sepa lam re la ti ge tene uni pengi yo are sina pengi yo are pengi yo are te yina ya tene ti ge nam to de ran ro to dogre besina ro to mare la nekap la khadu la khira pengi mare 다 오늘 가리 난국이 요아리세 나 테니 다 단다 나란 속에 검베 값을라 너섬 람도 시비게 탑텔라 검니 냠린시고 요아리라 다 랑게 체 디게 남도 온다고지 제인림보 양니 양도 샤르 네 현차 있나얀다 남도 있나얀다 양니 양도 샤르웨게 값을라 드니 스로 요지때나 somlo 많이 봐 난게 셈 코랑게 ngo라타나 난게 셈 남도 망보 샤르데베 남도 데라 따나 드니 디게 남도 데 제 랑hingi somno tona namto de jegedo namto mamboji jegedo hiamba jegedo sambandraboji yorete yapo je tana tini tige niya me bandraboji namto de ngone ya ja je endugo je mendo wa sambandraboji yungi yorela kana je endu kande si je endu yapo je tane gamna tini tige namto de ranging ki yaldo adaboji yungi yorela ti namto de ranging ki yaldo ti ngondo je gamna tige hira pengre sambandraboji
The establishment through analysis of the unreality or lack of existence of the object of the persistent thought is the application of inferential valid cognition. This is helpful in that by gradually becoming certain of the object's unreality, you will be less likely to be fixated on it. But it is not of immediate benefit, and it is not sufficient to bring about the liberation of the thought of the thing. In order to do that, we need to apply the techniques of meditation which are based on direct valid cognition. Now, when a thought arises repeatedly, whether it is a thought of attachment to something or a thought of unpleasantness or dislike and so on, if you apply the approach of direct valid cognition, you do not consider the object of the thought, what the thought is about, nor do you attempt to analyze that object to determine its reality or unreality. You look at the thought itself. We tend to think that thoughts arise, and that having truly arisen, they are truly present. In this approach, however, by looking directly at the thought while it is present, seeing how it arises and how and where it abides, if it does, then the thought will dissolve. And this is of more help.
Rinpoche, would you speak about what the original source of this ignorance is, and how and why it arises?
Tata marikpa de dambo yongwa ge ju dang chen kanre.
Maripa te chitang 고출 만들어요 라. 다 책코랑 그 온도 세나 마리 빠싱긴데 또 본다고 제다. 무살 본다고 지요 봐. Mari, Manton, Sena. Masalwanda Boji, you are la. Tig go at the condition the young you are Sena. Tange nail go on the sin, tange nail the Maripal in the Maripasiki. Sen Korang Maripa Korang Ngo Latina, Pe Salwayor. Maripa Mombat in the Yomari, Salwayor. Salbur Tone, Namto Mambo Shani, Tinitel Pe Salbo, Salbondaboji, you are la. Tinitella, take tange nail a drip on the sin, Maripasiki. Korang Ngo, Tani Gunzo, Trunongo on the sin, Kosalware. Tantam Nail go on the sin, Komombari. La, Tiniti Salwa, the condition Juan, Sena, Chitangan Aranso, Semtela, Nelu number Nior. Sending Ngo the Tomba in Bajior. Ngo the Tomba Rete, Tomba Yenaya, Ti Tomba te Nonka Tomba do Mare, Tomba te Salware, Salwa, the Salwa sinking te Nima Havanda Salwa Marete, Yenaya Khan, Yenaya Hitoba, Khan, Yenaya Tontopa, Salwati Yorella. Tinti Salwa Tomba ni di Nyom de Yore. Nyom de Yepa te la. Tigi Nyom de Yep Kapki, Salwa Tige, Sholan Rodu. Tini Salwa Telatini, Tini, no one number not super Hargi Yorella, no one number not super Haron, the Tomba te Nursing Yomare. Chitang Tomba di Nyom de Yore, the Tomba te Nursing Yomare, Salwa te Saltravan, the Butik Goni, Tini. Tomba ti tongi yomare. Tini maripa la jotu yore. Tomba ke nelu di togi yomare. Tini tel main maripa segi yore. Segi yore la, tini chol togi yore. Chuni ke nelu di chatsangwache, tong togi yomare. Per na ngaransu maripa sengi te, kandi jiri se na, tini tanda television raboji la ta na. Tini te television te pe salware la, rumoji, inju rumoji re. Remote pe salwa yimbo ongi teni pende sare, mere, teni tundore, henre, rere, sambanda bu chultu wadala. Uni main chulni, uni ndabo jin tongi wadala. Te tombo uni tangi nelu la kare sena gamchu non remote chunchi yore, te la chultu yore. Chultu wadala. Te kandi sina chultu yore, salto ni chultu yore. Pe te yendola ngarancho ke sem jin chunno te ya maripa te ya kandi sina chulbare. Truba de Kansin Trundu Yoris, then Saltron Trundu Yorella. Then Tetu go ne Tomba Nijing on to the corner, then Maripa de Big Pont to Yore.
Ignorance it can be understood in different ways. The literal meaning of the word is an absence or lack of knowledge, an absence or lack of clarity or lucidity. What it refers to is the absence of knowledge or recognition of the mind's nature. So, in that sense, we think of the mind as obscure or obscured, in that it does not have a lucid recognition of its own nature. Nevertheless, the defining characteristic of a mind is clarity or cognitive lucidity. So therefore, we have to say that our mind is, from one point of view, dull and obscured, and from another point of view, intensely lucid. The mind is lucid with regard to relative truth, and it is ignorant of absolute truth. Now, the reason for the arising of ignorance is that a mind has what we could call two characteristics. The nature of a mind is emptiness. But unlike space, the emptiness of a mind is not nothing or nothingness, because the other characteristic of a mind, the defining characteristic of it, is cognitive lucidity. Now, the mind's emptiness and its cognitive lucidity are together or inseparable. And it is the cognitive lucidity of a mind that is the source of variegated appearances or experiences for that mind. The ignorance arises because of the intensity of the cognitive lucidity. The intensity of the cognitive lucidity is so much that it somehow conceals or some say outshines the emptiness. And the mind therefore fails to recognize or know its own emptiness. And that absence of recognition or knowledge in turn produces misrecognition or misapprehension. It's a little bit like watching television. When you look at a television, what you are seeing is designs, colors that are present on a screen. The vividness and clarity of these colors allows you to apprehend what they are supposed to represent. So when you watch a television program, you have no trouble identifying places, persons, animals, mountains, and so on that are depicted. In that identification of what you are seeing as what it depicts, there is a misapprehension. You are not seeing places, persons, animals, or mountains. You are looking at colors on the surface of a little box in a room. The bewilderment or misapprehension that is necessary in order to at all enjoy a television is similar to the bewilderment of ignorance, where the very vividness or intensity of the images, of the lucidity of the mind overpowers the mind.
Yes.
I had a question about superimposition and denial. I'm not quite sure what I am supposed to think exists but does not really exist, and what I think doesn't exist really exists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm supposed to think
Okay.
yet.
That the drotapa dang korpa dapa ge kola, drotapa de mepala yopa zimba dang, korpa dapa de yopala mepa zimba resonson. The jund ngatso ge trulpa ge wondazena mepala ngatso yopa zimba ge kandra yore dang, dine ngoma shepa ge wondazena yopala ngatso mepa zimba kandra yore. Donna de drotapa do korpa dapa ge pesha no inside it.
Mepala yepranza basikite tanda chitang ta jipa lamda sipa ondo tona chi no andazo kanga tene ronging ngo tomba imbala mahini tene no namba na tsuba hirwa tela mepala yepar drondo basike warela tene ngaranzo ngasam lamda sipa senje semden gambege menga ga ondo sia na tene te mepala yepar drondo basike te semte je ngupo tangaranzo no wala semda namto da nyemo batenzo ngune chupachi yo samne zbatabuti la mepala yepar drondo basike yepala mepar kroa tapa sinkinte kande jirese na tene tanda ngaranzo ngune tan tambala chutanji toni imbala tanda sulayo ngihi majiba ngoma hiba patan tene tanda senji nelu la tawiga onda sena senji nelu te ngo ranging ki tomba tan tene senji nelu yon tapa te tene chitawa yindu mantong ne ngaranzo chige nyemon baton namdo ngonto chulsonga tela tene mepala yepar drondo pa yepala mepar
superimposition or exaggeration is the apprehension or belief that something that does not exist does exist. And to give an example of that, in the context of inferential valid cognition, it would be, for example, the apprehension of all appearances as truly existent. They are not truly existent as they appear, they are empty, but to a bewildered cognition, they seem real. So that is an example of superimposition. Another, in the context of taking direct valid cognition as the path, is when looking at the mind, to mistake thoughts and emotions as real. That's an example of superimposition within the mind. The other mistake, which is the denigration or denial, where you take that which exists not to exist, is in the context of inference, to lack certainty that emptiness is absolute truth, and in the context of direct experience, to fail to recognize the mind's nature, for example, as the unity of emptiness and cognitive lucidity. Time's up, we're going to stop.
Oh.